All right, we welcome you to another episode of Learning Stories. This is a show where we interview a diverse set of learners from the 21st century. In each episode of this show, we interview a guest who has a story to share about how they acquired a set of skills and knowledge in a creative and innovative manner. In the process, we hope to uncover a new understanding of learning as conceptualized, imagined, and narrated by the guests on our show. In this season of Learning Stories, we're focused on stories from urban India. We're looking at amazing young Indians doing interesting things in their unique contexts. And one such story is of a friend that I met a couple of years ago that I'd like to introduce before we jump into this amazing conversation. Siddharth Bothra is a chartered accountant passionate about the developments in the finance and business space. He likes giving fresh perspectives and exploring new angles in finance. He likes talking about disruptive technologies, and I'm a big fan of his work. He writes an amazing blog on Substack called Investing in India, which I will be linking in the show notes, so I highly recommend you subscribe to it. He also hosts two really interesting podcasts called Bazaar and Vyapar, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that in today's podcast. So Siddharth, let's just jump into this conversation. I have tons of questions. I've spent the last week, reading your blog, listening to your podcast, and you are a chartered accountant by profession. So, I want to dial it back a little bit, and I'm
Yeah,
curious about the Siddharth. What was Siddharth like growing up? The young boy Siddharth. What school did you go to? What were your interests outside school? Did you have any hobbies? So I'm just curious about that world before we go into the other details.
absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate the intro as well. I'm a podcaster myself, so I know the intro, like the beginning has to be really good, and I think you nailed it. It was a really good intro, and I was just looking back. Okay, this is good. Uh, and I mean, again, really happy to be doing this. And you are doing an amazing work as well. I think I'm reading some of the stuff that you write and the podcast as well, like talking to other people. So amazing stuff you're doing, keep doing it. uh Coming back to the question, so how was I like growing up? What was I like a kid? I was a nerd, man. I was that guy. I was very thin. I used to wear a jacket to cover my arms, so that no one could see how thin I was. And I don't know, there was this thing in my house that, you had to be first. Like, I moved to Bangkok very early on. So I was born in Jaipur. But my dad's business, he's in the diamond industry. So he moved to Bangkok when I was like 1 year. And I spent my childhood, my till 10th, I was there. I was in an international school, Cambridge affiliated, something like that. So pretty much I was that studious guy, the typical nerd you say who's always studying, he's trying to get first in the class. And I used to like to read a lot. Like, I don't know where it came from, but growing up, whenever I used to have summer breaks, I used to come back to Jaipur, and my family is all into stock markets. Like every morning we would wake up, we'd not see news or we'd not see what's happening in the world, but it's just going to be CNBC Avaz or some of the business channels, and there would be a small ticker line at the bottom where you'd see stock names and stock prices. And I remember, like, that fascinated me in some sense. So I was very much into finance from the very start. I don't know how it began. Maybe this is the beginning of it. And I also started saving. Like, whenever I used to come back to India from Bangkok, and there's this tradition, you visit your relative's place and they give you money in those envelopes. So I used to save that, and I started saving from when I was 9 or 10 years of age, and I started investing in the markets when I was 11. So, like, if you had to sum up my childhood, I always used to get first in the class. I used to study a lot. I was very curious about, and I'm still am very curious about everything. Like, I was joking to my friend that I could write an article on quantum physics. Like I have no idea how it works. I'm reading a few books on it, quantum physics, quantum entanglement, all of that. Very, very fascinating stuff. So I was a very curious kid. Love to play football. Uh, love to play sports, all kinds of sports. Uh, but yeah, very, very fascinated about finance, how money works. And I started investing at a very early age. Hobbies, if you ask me, they were like playing football, swimming. We also used to have these Olympics, school Olympics. So I used to participate in those events. But yeah, study, sports, these were the two things that I was doing when I was a kid. Yeah.
That's amazing, Siddharth. And I feel like listening to this story, the fact that your dad had a business, the fact that, your family was interested in stocks, and now you have
Yeah.
a podcast that's called Bazaar, which means market, and Vyapar, which sort of means business, right? So you're able to connect the dots in little ways. But some of the things you noticed as a young boy growing up, because in your blog, I know you have a section where you talk about personal stories and your personal thoughts. So it's not just finance you're interested in, but when you were growing up, you saw your father in a business. Were there some things you noticed about business and money watching your parents in general?
Yeah, so the my dad, so we are a Marwadi family, right? And Marwadis, we are not known to be an army or, education or anything. We are pure businessmen. Like that's how the world thinks. That is slowly changing now. A lot of people don't get into business. Like I'm doing a job right now. But the mind works in that way. कि यार क्या धंधा कर सकते हैं? Like every 2 or 3 days, I'm just sending, to my other friends. I'm telling them, यार ये धंधा हम कर सकते हैं, or maybe this is a new business idea. It's a bullshit idea, I know that, but that's how it works. And even like it's the same with my dad or with my relatives as well. Like anything we would see, right? We would try to see gaps in the market. What are the gaps in the market, and we would create a bullshit idea. And maybe and that's how I think the Marwadi mentality works, right? A lot of people have these crazy ideas, they'll never implement it, but maybe there's some guy crazy enough to implement that idea and he creates a business out of it. But that's the talk, like on dinner tables, on lunch tables, it's general talk. I did not used to speak about the diamonds business with my dad, like that's the business that he was in, but we would just talk about ice cream businesses. We would talk about, okay, what restaurants we can open, what can we do. Like Thai people, they're generally not very business minded, so we would talk about these tiny gaps in the market, that like we can import something from India and then sell it in Bangkok and multiple. Nothing happened. uh, this was all just bullshitting, and I would also speak to my friends about that. Again, I mean, that's the mindset. We don't talk about, like, me personally, I'm not very much into politics and all of that thing. We just normal conversations, you'll find a business idea. So that's how it was with my dad. I've not really spoken too much about business ideas, but mostly with friends. That's how it was.
And I feel like your understanding, because I was reading through your blog, and I got a lot of good advice with regards to your fundamental analysis of companies. I feel like you've been training your brain for such a long time with regards to analyzing these companies and thinking about them. But once you were done with school, Siddharth, in India, for most of us, we either choose science, commerce, or arts, right? So why did you take up the path that you took up, and what did you eventually study at university?
So at 10th, like till 10th, I was in Bangkok, right? And then I had to make a choice. Like, do I stay in Bangkok and then, take up that graduation BCom, or, I wanted to go in commerce. I was very clear that science is not for me. I was not really, like, I liked science as well, but if you ask me, I did not have so much clarity at that time. Like a lot of students, even people are listening to this, and if you're 16, 15, whatever age is, you don't know what you like. So I had two things that I liked a lot, which I came to know when I was much older, like when I was 23, 22. That's when I realized, okay, this is what I really like. But the two things were, one was finance, like how money works. I was fascinated by it. Like if you look at the business model of banks, right? They're using other people's money to make more money, right? And they're just, it's like finance is nothing but how quickly can you make money move in an economy, right? That's finance for you. The quicker you can make the money move, the larger the economy can grow. And if it gets stuck, like in India, if you see all these infra projects, money gets stuck over there. So that's what brings the economy down. But I was very sure that, okay, finance is something that I am really into, like stock markets, not the other aspects of finance. Like you don't really know when you're 16 that you're going to do a job in a corporate and all of that. But I knew, okay, numbers is something I can deal with. And second was psychology. Uh, Very interested in psychology, subconscious mind, how the mind works, how you can train it, rewire it, all of that. So I it was very expensive in Bangkok. So we did search for university options and everything, but studies are very expensive over there. And all my relatives were in Jaipur at that time. So I thought, I could come back to India for my 11th, 12th colleges and all of that. And we had a plan to shift to India back. So I decided that, I could pursue CA. Like this was a very cost effective option. You can practically complete your CA course. Now it's a little bit more expensive, but back then, like 10 years or 11 years back, in 1 lakh or 1,50,000, you can do everything. It takes 5 years. It's a long course, but my cousin brother is also a CA. So he was the one who was mentoring me. I went to him and I was like, what can I do? Like, what are the options? CFA, CA, CPA. There were multiple options in finance. There was MBA as well. But MBA was expensive. So I wanted a course which was not very expensive and a course which gave a lot of breadth, like a lot of coverage, right? Because if you do MBA in finance, right, they're going to teach you only finance, like maybe how money works, accounting, all of that stuff. But in CA, it's everything. Like you have indirect taxation, you have direct taxation, you have costing, you have financial markets, you have, even now they've included international taxation, SFM, multiple subjects, like 8 or 9 subjects are there. So from a coverage point of view, if you do CA, you get knowledge. Even law is there, like basic corporate law is there, very advanced once you go deeper into CA. So this was a course, if you do it, you learn a lot. Like there's a lot of stuff that when you start doing a job, or if you want to start a business, it gives you that, at least from a theoretical point of view, how things are working in India. If you want to do business in India, it gives you that knowledge. So I thought, okay, this makes sense. Low cost, high coverage, high content, and okay, it's going to take me 5 years maybe. And the thing with CA is that getting in, getting in is easy. The first level is easy to clear, but the second and third level is difficult. And if you can't clear it, you don't become a CA, and your time goes. Those 5 years are not going to come back. So there are many people in India right now who've not become CA, and they're just getting entry level jobs. So it is a risky decision to take. Like if you want to become a CA, you have to be very sure, because you have to put in a lot of work, a lot of study has to go. The content is crazy. Like it's like books are stacked to the top. You'll see memes of CA students where they post pictures, and like there are too many books. And if anyone from the institute is listening to this podcast, you could restructure the course, because now in the AI world, you don't need so much theory. You need practical, a course designed to be practically useful. So that's how I decided that I want to do CA. And I moved back. I alone came back to India. I moved to Jaipur. I was staying with my relatives for 5 years, and that's how I chose this particular path for my career.
So, for like a young person in India that does want to take up this path of being a CA, do they have to do a degree along with the CA thing? Or like what? So, you said that there were some exams, but I know a lot of my friends that pursued it. There was also this articleship period where you have to
Yes.
work and intern with companies. So, for someone that knows nothing about CA and wants to pursue that path, can you break down your journey in that 5 year period for me, Siddharth?
Yeah. So You need to clear your 12th for you to register. There's a entrance exam known as it's the first level of CA, right? Which is known as CPT, Common Proficiency Test. So that's the first level of CA, and it is multiple choice. Now I think they've changed it a little bit, so the course also has evolved over time, and the layers are still there. Like you have three layers: CPT, IPCC, and then CA finals. For CPT, you need to clear your 12th. Once you clear your 12th, you can register on the CA website, and you can, basically tell the institute that, okay, I want to appear for the entrance exam, right? And then you'll have to start studying for it. Like there are four subjects for which you have to study. And now it's more easier. Like previously, what used to happen was the exams would be on the single day. For CPT, there would be four subjects, and it was multiple choice questions before, and it would be on a single day. Now I think they have different days for different subjects, basically. So you get 4 days, you get more time to study, and it is 50% MCQs, 50% objective. You have to write answers. So they have the examinations have evolved a little bit, but CPT is how you start. Once you clear CPT, then you go to the second level, which is IPCC. So IPCC is a little bit more advanced. They are the same subjects, like subjects go from 4 to 8. The number of subjects also increase. And that also, examinations are held 2 times in a year for IPCC. So you can decide when you want to appear. Once you clear IPCC, that's when the fun begins. So once you clear IPCC, then you have to complete 2.5 years of articleship. Now I think it's 2 years. Again, for us, it was 3 years. Uh, check it on the CA website. Like whoever is interested, I think they've updated all of this on the website. So you have to do articleship with a CA firm, right? And then you have to show that evidence that, okay, I've completed my articleship, and then you can appear for the CA final exams. So CA final is the toughest to crack. It is more advanced than IPCC. It really goes very deep into a lot of the practical stuff that goes when you're running a company. Like it approaches it like, okay, if you were the CFO, what all things do you need to know to run a company? Practically, that's what they teach you in CA finals. They don't teach it in that way. Like if a tuition teacher came to the class and he was like, guys, do you want to become CFOs, right? Do you want to become future leaders of the world, right? Of not only India, it's applicable throughout it's globally applicable. This is what you need to know, right? These are the subjects that can get you there from a theory perspective. Practically, like all knowledge doesn't really matter if you can't talk to people. Like the most important skill is to talk to people, understand them, lead them, right? That's something you learn on the job. But if a teacher came and he or she told me that, this is going to help you, it will give you the weapons of knowledge to become a future CFO, I would have paid more attention in class. But yeah, that's the final level, and that's the most difficult one to crack. And there is no limit on the attempts. You can give as many attempts you want, but generally it takes 4.5 years or 5 years to clear your CA, and post that, you can apply for a job, and parallelly you will also have to complete your college degree. So mostly what people do is they do a dummy degree, right? Because what happens is you also have to do, after IPCC, you have to go to tuitions, you have to study, you have to also do articleship, right? And doesn't leave much time, right? When you want to do these three things together, you can't also go to the college. And I know people in Bombay who are doing all of that. Like they're also going to college, going to tuitions, going to the articleship firm, which is like a job. Like it's the cheapest labor out there. Like CA articles, they're really good. They work really hard, and it's the cheapest labor available. So they're practically doing 8 to 10 hours of work every day. They're studying, they're doing tuitions, and I give my hats off to people who also manage to go to the college every day. you have to do all of this in a span of 2 3 years, 2 to 3 years, right? So a lot of people don't go to colleges. They take that dummy route where you can just, where attendance is not compulsory, and they get that degree, like a 3 year graduation degree. That's what I did. Like, I did not go to college. I used to go 10 days in a year just to write the exams. And in Rajasthan, like, we have a joke that you can write anything uh, in the paper. You can even write the song, like your favorite song, just write the lyrics, and they just count how many pages you've written and they give you numbers. So that's how it is. Like, in universities, not the recognized ones, that's how it is. And for CAs, I think that's a critical thing, because you have to manage your time. Like, if you want to become a CA, more than intelligence, it's about managing your time and being very smart with your time. So that's something.
Yeah, that's really helpful to understand how you've broken that down so that. But now, since you started working, from 2015 all the way up to now, it's been about 9 years. You worked in several different roles at a variety of different companies. So now that you moved into the real world, what does it look like to be like a CA on a day-to-day basis? So what does a CA do? Maybe you can help me understand this by telling me about what you did in each of these roles in different companies.
Sure. So 2014 to 2017 was my articleship period. Like, that's the pre-qualification work experience where I was heavily involved in statutory audit. So statutory audit is when every company has to get it done. Uh, Listed companies have to get it done. What basically is required by a statutory auditor is to look. It's an independent party looking at the numbers of a company. So if I am the manager or I am the owner of a company and I want to sell my company, or if I want to, make the stock price move up, I could give any number, right? Like, there are news of fraudulent activities as well and all of that stuff. So you need a third person, right, or an independent person to look at those numbers and do an audit, which is known as statutory audit. So which is done once a year. So that was primarily how I started. During my articleship, we were auditing multiple banks. We were also auditing hotels. So first, what you do is you understand the business model. Like, how does the company make its revenue? What are the expenses? What are areas of risks? Like, where are manual activities involved? Where is there a motivation for the management to maybe change some numbers? All of that stuff. So you have to first get in that mindset ki locha kidhar ho sakta hai, right? Where is the option to do fraudulent activities, and then you work backwards. So first 2 to 3 years, that is what I was doing. Uh, and then 2018, I cleared my CA. I joined Grant Thornton, which is like a big five company. It's like just below Deloitte, EY, all of those. So it's part of those big five, big six groups. Right now, they're all facing major backlash if you look at that, and that's how the work culture is. Like, when you become a CA, you have that glittery eyed view of the world that मैं तो आग लगा दूंगा. Like, once I've cleared CA, that I'm gonna conquer the world, right? But the world starts when you become a CA, right? And these big four, big five firms, if you ask me, it depends on your manager, but the work culture in general is not. It is quite toxic, if you ask me. Like, if this is okay for me to say it on this show, uh, you know, they don't treat you like an employee. Like, they treat you like disposable people, right? So you have to learn how to work in that environment, which is not something they teach you while you're doing CA. Even CA firms, it's not easy to work. Like, you are working long hours, 14, 15 hours a day, and you're getting paid peanuts for it. Like starting stipend is like 2,000 rupees per month, and you're working 15 hours a day for that, right? So it doesn't add up. But you going there with a mindset to learn. Like, once you clear your CA, you wanna, you know, there's no hand holding for CAs. The expectation is once you become a CA, you've done your articleship, day one, you should know everything. That's the expectation. And I mean, a lot of people do hold up to it. But then I joined Grant Thornton. I was again in the statutory audit department. And the thing about statutory audit is you don't learn anything. Like post 3 or 4 months, right? I realized that I was not really learning anything new, because as a CA, like I told you, the potential of a CA is he can become a CFO, he can become a CEO, he can be a leader basically in a company, right? That's what he can get to. But if you get stuck in a niche, and that's what happens with a lot of CAs, right? Once they clear, they don't have that clarity. कि मुझे बनना क्या है? What do I see myself, 10 years down the line? And then you have to choose the skills you have to build. So if you get in these big four, big five firms very early on, what happens is you get good at very few things, like statutory audit, internal audit, maybe, risk analysis, all of that. They have a big team, they have a lot of employees. So you can't do much over there. You learn a lot. You learn how to hustle. You learn how to grind. That's something I learned in GT, how to grind, how to, be in a very competitive, very intensive, high pressure environment and still work and still be able to do stuff. So that's what it taught me. I'm very, very grateful for GT actually, if you ask me, because after I left GT, I was like, I can do anything now. There is no environment where I will feel pressurized, because I've seen insane pressure, right? So it teaches you that skill set. You will not learn a lot about, the various things in finance if you're in a big four, big five, right? Because it's a very specialized role, but you learn how to hustle, you learn how to grind. My suggestion is work in a big four, big five for maybe 1 or 2 years, and then maybe look for a movement into the industry in the corporate world. But depends on your goals, what it is. So 2 years I worked in GT. Then the COVID thing happened, 2020. Everything went haywire. We were locked at home in Bombay. It's a 1 BHK apartment where I was living, and family was also with me. They were watching TV. My sister was dancing. I was working in a corner. It was difficult, man. Uh, Working from home was difficult, and especially your boss knew that you had nowhere to go. So that line got blurred between personal time, professional time. We were working more than ever, right? And I thought, man, this is not going to work out. Like, I'm not, and I had no problem with working, but I was not learning much. So that's when in 21, I made a decision to join a startup. Uh, Maxwell Energy is the name of the startup. They are in the EV space. I thought, okay, this is a space which is growing, and they told me that you have to do everything. Like, they try to scare me by saying that, if you come here, you have to do everything. Like, you have to be not only finance, but admin, HR, fundraising, whatever comes. You have to do everything. And I was like, cool, this is what I want. So the pressure went from like increased by 5x, but it did not feel like it, because I was learning so much that, there was a new challenge every day. And that's what really pushes me. That is what I thrive on. I need a challenge. If I don't have a challenge, I'm a very lazy person. I don't know, maybe what I'll do, I don't know. So I need a new challenge, and that startup was, I just knew that this is going to be great. So when I joined the startup, that's when I really started using my CA knowledge. That's when I started to think that, okay, what can we do? Because in a startup, nothing is structured, right? You have to set things, you have to set the processes, how things are going to work out, all of that, right? So I started using my brain, and that's when I realized the most important skill for any person who's doing a job is the ability to take decisions. That is the most important quality anyone can have. We have a lot of people who are very intelligent, right? But they don't know how to take decisions. There are maybe 10 options in front of you. You need to build that intuitive ability. And obviously research is required in that. It's not like, you look at these options and but you have to think like a principal, think like an owner, take ownership, not run away. Lot of times what happens is and it's the environment that shapes you, right? Like you're in a corporate where people are just like, oh man, I want to come at 9, I want to leave at 5. That's it. They don't use their brain, they don't take ownership, they don't take decisions, and they run away from responsibility, right? Growth will not happen there. Growth is never smooth. Like growth happens when there is chaos, and that startup was the most chaotic place I had been in. And in the past 3.5 years, I was working in finance. I was like taking financial decisions. Where should we put our money in? What should we do with the money? Where should we invest in capex? All of that stuff. uh, and even the micro things, like, who's getting paid, how much are we extracting enough value out of everyone, how can I motivate enough people, to grow them. Like people are the most important thing. You can have amazing products, if you don't have people, it's not going to work out. So I learned a lot of stuff. We also went through a fundraise, so I learned the whole thing. How do you pitch your startup, how do you sell them an idea, how that works out, all of that, HR, admin, all of that. So like in that startup is how I learned how to take ownership, how to think, if you ask me, and how to take decisions. And that, I think, if you're a CA and if you can get exposure to that sort of environment, that will really, really build your career exponentially.
That's amazing, Siddharth. And it's nice to see how your career evolved from your trainee articleship days to, working in the big four to moving to a startup. I think you showed people like a possible pathway. But, as someone that's worked in the finance field, and, I'm just curious because I know you're a very philosophical person and, you're really interested in psychology as well. So, like, if I had to tell you what is your relationship to money, like, how would you answer that question? Like, what do you think money does for you, or what money can do for someone in general?
See, money is very important. I think money can buy happiness. A lot of people will disagree with me. Money can buy happiness. That is something I believe in, because when you don't have to worry about paying your loan, or it, all that pressure that comes with being under financial burden, you can do other stuff, right? Money can buy you happiness. Money is very important, and you need to know how to manage your money. You need to have those goals that, okay, 10 years down the line I need to have this much money. For me specifically, if you ask me, I am not a person who wants to be a billionaire or a millionaire. I just want to be financially free. I want to have enough money, enough sources of income, and I'm working on that, like the blog, podcast. Even I think that's what drives you as well. I think at to some extent, that's why we're doing this, right? Because we want to develop enough sources of income that we don't have to do a job anymore, right? Like if I had maybe 10 CR right now in the bank, I would not be I would not be doing a job. I would be doing something else. I want to help the underprivileged. I want to teach them. I want to like maybe travel the world. There are multiple things I want to do. I want to maybe create impact in some way, right? So money for me is a means to buy freedom. I think it's how you become free in the true sense. Although if you look at it now with AI coming up, and I have a crazy theory how smartphones are gonna make all of us slaves. That's maybe, I don't know. That's a tangent we can touch upon later, but it's very important to have emergency funds, to have proper, your relationship with money has to be good. uh, and for me, once I get free financially, it opens my time up. Like it buys me time. People say that time is money. Money is time. It's two parts of the equation, right? So if you have enough money, you can use your time. You don't know how much time you have left. Maybe I have some 20-25 years left, I don't know. Maybe 10 years, who knows, right? We can't see the future. But if you have money, you can do a lot of stuff with the time that it gives you.
Right.
Like right now, if you're spending 15 hours on the job, right? But you wanna maybe do something else. If you have money, you can do that, and that can give you happiness. So that's my take on it. Money is very important. Money can buy happiness. Very important to be very smart about how you manage your money, and you need to have multiple sources of you know money generating sources. So think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very powerful thought, especially for young Indians growing up, in our country today. And that's something I always thought about. Like for instance, my dad, for instance, didn't have like a very big. He didn't graduate high school, okay, but he had a very strong business acumen, and he
Hmm.
was able to start a business and achieve so much more than a lot of very very educated people. And I was always confused about this psychology behind money, and I think clarifying that is really important, having. And I really like how you equated money with this concept of financial freedom, because our most valuable resource is time,
Absolutely.
right? At the end of the day, all of us have a limited amount of time, and eventually we are going to get sick in one way or the other, so you have to understand how to use the limited time you have in the best way possible, right? And I was listening to another podcast, Siddharth, and there was some like a story that she said is that, and it was in a British context, that if someone, let's say they have 100,000 pounds, or I think if no,
Hmm.
if they save 300 pounds every month for about 40 years, they would get up to like 160,000 pounds in like 40 years. But if they put the same amount in like a general index fund or like an ETF of sorts, they would make that to up to like 1 million.
Yeah.
And I feel like something like investing and saving, like,
Hmm.
can you help me understand this a little better? Like maybe by telling me a little bit about why you started investing in India as a blog, and why you
Yeah.
think Indians should understand investing as a concept much better.
Absolutely. But I'm curious too because see, I'm a podcaster as well. So, uh, I want to ask you a question. What is your take on money? Like, my take on money is I'm doing this because I want to be financially free, open up my time, not do a job for the rest of my life. But what is it that, like, what is your take on money? What does it mean to you? Uh, your take on it.
And that's a very powerful question, right? So that, because for me, I think a lot of our understanding of money comes from what we've been exposed to growing up,
Yeah.
right? Because I grew up in like a business sort of family, right? Early on I realized that money can be equal to the value you add to society.
Hmm.
The more value you add, that money is like a side effect of that.
Hmm.
So you have to find a way to add a lot of value, and that way money will come. But if you are constantly thinking about accumulating, by making ends meet, right? And also, I think first principles thinking is really important, right? When you're looking at a problem, there's always, like, if you look at any problem you face in society, you're not the only one facing that problem. If you can create a solution for that problem and
Yeah.
you can help 10 other people, then you can take a small amount of the value that you produce, right? So
Yeah.
in a country like India, for instance, we have 1 billion people. Okay, so if you get 1 billion people, if you create like a product, whatever it is, even if it's a drop shipping product, a podcast, or whatever,
Hmm.
you can get 1 lakh people to pay you 1 rupee a month.
Hmm.
You're basically in a lot of ways financially free, right? And there are always audiences you can create in like different niches and build sort of that wealth. But I think financial freedom is a big thing, but for me money is also value created.
Hmm.
And I feel like the wealthiest people in the world are often the ones that have built or created a lot of value, whether it is through companies or knowledge or different sort of mechanisms in their own.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I like that the way you put it is that money is a byproduct of the value that you create. That's a extremely powerful. I'm gonna remember that. That's gonna stick with me.
For sure.
That was a
And
nice
that
one.
was something I really related to. Maybe not able to articulate it as much, but I think
Yeah.
when we have these conversations, we just expand our understanding of money. And one thing I started doing recently, so that like, I started changing the concept of money in my head to make it something I enjoy doing in my leisure time.
Hmm.
Like in the evenings, people like to watch like films. So one of the things I really really enjoy doing is just reading like blogs about by VC funds, by entrepreneurs. And that's when I came across your blog as well, like understanding how the stock market works. I'm just so intrigued by this concept of why we have money and how it's evolved over time. And I'd love to know your thoughts on that too, Siddharth. Like, why did
Yeah,
money evolve as a medium of exchange for human beings? Why was it the most effective? And why do some countries have sort of more money than other countries? Like, how do you sort of come to understand that from a first principle sort of thinking way?
that's a very interesting question. I think that's one of the best questions that anyone has ever asked me. Like, why do some countries make more money than others? Right? That's a very very basic question that we used to learn growing up in macroeconomics. If you have had that subject, macroeconomics is the study of money at a very macro level, and then you have microeconomics, which is the study of money at a very micro level. So very interesting. Why did money, like, I think I'll break this question down into two or three parts. First is, why did we have money as the medium of exchange, right? Like a mode of transfer of value. Like money is nothing but a piece of paper, right? Like if you watch that movie PK, right? Over there, he is an alien who has come from some other planet, and he's seeing people use that Gandhi ji ka note. And today is 2nd October. So again, happy Gandhi Jayanti. But he, Gandhi's photo was there on multiple things. Like it was there on the book, it was there on a newspaper advertisement, it was there on the note as well, 100 rupees note, right? And he thought that, okay, the value is derived from that image, right? So he goes to a vegetable vendor. He starts giving things. He gives a notebook with Gandhiji's face on it. Then he gives some other stuff, and the the vendor is like, "What the f, man? What's this? Why are you giving me notebooks?" Right? Then he gives that piece of paper with Gandhiji's photo on it, and then he realizes, okay, this is where the value is. So, if you ask me, see, this is a very interesting question. Actually, there is something known as intersubjective reality. If you've read the book Homo sapiens, right, there's a concept known as intersubjective reality, where the author says that something is real because everyone believes it to be true, right? The same can also be said about God, but I'll not go there. Very, very touchy subject. But everyone today in today's world believes that $1 is equal to 83 rupees, right? So that's the value. And it's easy to use. Like a lot of, if you read history, it's a little patchy in my mind, but there were other modes as well. Like people used to have barter systems. Like, you know, if I have cows, you have milk, or you have, maybe gold. I would say I'll give you one cow and you give me 100 grams of gold. And the value was not equal. Like your gold is more valuable, like maybe equal to three cows or four cows, right? So you needed something that was like it was a middle, it removed that barter system, was a uniform way of exchanging value, right? Like you look at that piece of paper, you know that, okay, this piece of paper, 100 rupees note is 100 rupees, right? And if I go out there and if I buy something with that, that is going to be 100 rupees, right? So barter system people use, they realize it did not work. Then I think they went to coins, gold coins. There's a long history, people can read about it, I'll not go into it. But then they realized, okay, this is something that works, and everyone started to believe in it, right? And today half the world uses US dollar as it's like, it's a pegging system that is used. And if anything happens to the US dollar, the whole economy, goes, it moves the whole economy, like the global economy. That's how much dependent we are on the US dollar, and on other currencies as well being used locally. So if tomorrow everyone wakes up and you tell me, Siddharth, ki yaar, I don't believe that this note is 100 rupees. And if I also tell you, okay, I also don't believe this is 100 rupees, there's no value. So because we all agree to believe in the value of this, that's how money has evolved. And now you're seeing cryptocurrencies as well. You're seeing how the value of a Bitcoin is going up and down. That's precisely because you think one Bitcoin is maybe $200. I think one Bitcoin is maybe $1,000, and that's how the price moves. When a day comes when everyone believes that okay, one Bitcoin is maybe $50 or $20, that'll be fixed. So I think it's very convenient. The reason why money has evolved is it's very convenient. It's easy to store. It doesn't, wash away, whatever. It's easy to store, easy to exchange, very convenient. And now with the digital banking as well, now money is nothing but a number on screen. Like what will happen 10 years or 15 years down the line, you will have no cash. And then you can create, there will be no limit to how much money you can create. So if tomorrow there is maybe $100 trillion in the global economy, and the Reserve Bank or the Federal Bank comes out and they're like, we want to add 10 trillion more, they'll just punch the number. That's it. You can create money by just typing in. That's how money will be created in the future. So there are multiple drawbacks to that. If it happens, I'll not go into an economics course right now, but that's where we're heading. You've seen how UPI works and all of that. So that's the future of money, and that's where we are headed.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much to talk about, right? Economics, finance, money, but so that I know, like, investing in India is something that you are really, really passionate about at a more personal front. So, like, what are some things Indians can invest in to achieve or work towards financial freedom, even if it's not the goal? If you want to grow your money in India, like, what are some options for Indians, young professionals in India that want to grow their money apart from, just leaving it in a bank?
So, see, there are many financial instruments out there. Uh, the best way to grow wealth for a normal average person, I would say, is to invest in mutual funds. Right? It sounds very, very like everyone's tells you. You watch it on TV as well, right? Celebrities are now endorsing mutual funds. See, the thing is, the problem with money is that we want a lot of it very fast, right? And it doesn't happen that way. Money and wealth are two separate things. Money, if it comes quickly, it can also go away quickly. But wealth is something it takes years to build. Warren Buffett was not a billionaire till he was like 52 or 51 something. I could be wrong. Just fact check me here. But after that, if you look at that curve, right, from 51 to 80 is when he made majority of his wealth. And he was very patient about it, and he understood a key concept that it takes time to build wealth, right? Especially in the markets. Like if you have a business, that's a separate thing. Like if you have a business, you have full control, right? You can decide how quickly you want to grow the business, how many products you can sell, what's your skill, how quickly can you scale, right? That's in your control. You can get rich quick if you have a business. But if you're investing in the markets and you want to get rich in 2 years, I'm sorry to tell you, but you can't. Like, it's very difficult. Maybe 1 out of 1,000 or million person put his money as a gamble in some stock. That stock went up like 1,000% in 2 years and he made money. And that's a lot of the stories that we hear out there on the internet talks about that, double your money in 2 years. It doesn't work like that, right? Economy cannot grow that fast. When you're investing in the market of a country, you're investing in that country. So if you're investing in the Indian markets, right, if you invest in a mutual fund, which then invests in a stock, ultimately mutual fund is just managing your money, right? So they are investing in companies that are doing business in India and globally as well. And those companies are growing maybe 10%, 15%, 20% in a year, right? So your money, if you can grow your money 15% per annum for the next 20 years, that's it. You've built a lot of wealth, right? But if you want to grow it in the next 2 years, then you have to take more risks. You have to take, you'll start believing in some person who is like, okay, invest in derivatives, more risky options, where you can also lose all that money, right? There is always that thing. So a lot of people, they get blinded by that greed. And that is one of the biggest risks for people, the new people who are getting in the markets. Understand that it's a slow process, have a long term mindset, right? and then you go ahead. And if I talk about the investing options, so you have mutual funds, you can directly invest in securities, right? You can open a demat account with Zerodha, Grow, whatever. Like you choose. There are many apps right now. You can directly invest in companies. You can also apply for IPOs. You can invest in debt funds. There are many corporate debt funds out there. There is government debt also that's out there. You can invest in them if you want short-term fixed returns. Like debt is a fixed uh, investment return instrument, but the returns are low because the risk is also low. So many options are there. If I have to build a portfolio for you, and if you are 20, 21, 25, my suggestion to you would be to take more risks, right? Maybe keep 80% of your savings in a mutual fund and in multiple mutual funds. Like even in mutual funds, you have large cap, small cap, mid cap, micro caps as well. Now, like if you look at my blog, I'm writing about micro caps because you are not going to get rich by investing in companies like HDFC, Infosys. These are companies that have already blown up. Like now maybe you will make 100% returns in those companies, right? So my mindset with the blog is I want to find opportunities that are gonna go up maybe 1000%, 10,000% in the next 5 years or 7 years, right? And the probability of finding that is very low. Like it's a very high risk investment, but that's how you exponentially scale your investment. If you're gonna invest in these big companies, it's gonna be you'll not make a lot of money, but it'll be safe. So you have to decide what stage are you in. Can you take risks? If you take risks, there are many options for you. If you cannot take risks, again there are many options for you. But I would say, apart from the emergency fund, you should not keep a lot of idle funds in your bank, because that makes 2 or 3%, right? And the concept that I want to tell you why it's so important is to make a superior rate of return is because inflation, right? Like today 1 kg of onion is worth maybe 60 rupees, right? 5 years down the line, maybe it's going to be worth 90 rupees. So I don't know, I'm just making like some
Yes, yeah.
example. But if you do not grow your money by at least 10% every year, what will happen is that although the real value of the money will increase, like it will go from 100 to 120 in 5 years, but the problem is you will not be able to buy the same amount of stuff with that money. So you're actually getting poorer. So if you keep your money in a savings bank, right, and if you keep your money in FDs, again, which are not very high return investments, they're very, very safe, right? You'll not even beat inflation, right? So it is a risk to not take a risk. That's something that Warren Buffett said, and that stuck with me. And if you're especially young, it's time for you to take risks. If you read the autobiography or the biography of Jhunjhunwala, who's known as the bull of Indian markets, one of the things he said is that it is not enough to identify opportunities. You need to have the skill to take disproportionate risks. So if I have a good opportunity and I'm very scared that okay man, I can't take enough risks, I'll not get rich. So getting rich in the markets, you need to have intelligence, absolutely, but you need to have the balls to take that risk, and you could lose that money. The risk is that because you're investing in such risky stocks, right? Because you want to grow your money maybe 10x, 100x, there is a 90% or 85% probability that you will lose all that money, right? But there is a 15% chance as well that that 1 lakh rupees can turn into 1 CR 10 years down the line. And if you have the balls to take that risk, that's how you make money in the markets. That's something I'm learning as well. I have, I'm slowly building that intelligence to, you know, discover stocks, but how to take that risk is still something that I'm learning.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, Siddharth. And I feel like when I started investing as well, as someone that didn't have a background in finance, there were lots of terms like P ratio, market capitalization, multi baggers that I was not very familiar with. And I used to look at media reports of certain companies and not the financial reports when I take some of these decisions. And I always felt like I had a good financial acumen to pick it up, and then I lost a bunch of money. And then I realized that you have to think about an investment from a first principles perspective as well. Like a dhanda or a business is not based on the most glamorous thing. It's based on debit, credit, or like balance sheets, and if it's actually making money. But that concept of compounding also completely blew my mind away, right? For instance, you have 100 rupees. If you're growing it at 10% every year, in about 10 years you can double that to make it 200, right? And
Yeah.
it just increases, like, in terms of the amount of money you have. So do you want 100 rupees in 10 years, or do you want 200 rupees? That is one of the biggest reasons you sort of invest, right? And like another big like initiative that you have, Siddharth, is called Vyapar, which is your podcast where you interview entrepreneurs and business people doing amazing things. You've done about 39 episodes. So based on all these interviews, Siddharth, I want to ask you, according to you, after you interviewed all these people, what is a good business and what is a good entrepreneur? What are some characteristics of each, according to you, based on what
Very
you've
good.
heard and listened
Yeah.
to? Yeah.
Very good question. I think this is a really good question, and I'm sort of reflecting at all my interviews that I've done.
Yeah, and
And
it doesn't have to be perfect. I just want
yeah,
to
yeah.
know what comes to your mind first based on what you've
See,
heard.
I think a good business, if you ask me, is something that can be sustainable, right? You need to be able to achieve break even. It could be a great idea, but if you're not making profits, right, then you cannot sustain it. There are many businesses out there, even in India, we're seeing so many startups come, right, with amazing ideas, but they are not able to make money. Like, it's where people look at valuations, revenue, all of that, but where you need to look at is bottom line and cash flows. Can you make profits? Number one. And number two, are you profitable from a cash flow standpoint? Like, there could be a situation where you're making a sale of 100 CR, but if those customers are not paying you back, right, then it impacts your cash flow. So a good business, I would say, is one that can become profitable and become sustainable maybe in 3 or 5 years. In the first year, it's difficult to become profitable because you're investing so heavily, right? But I would say, yeah, like if it can become profitable sustainably without raising external investments, right? Without, because doing a business with your own money, bootstrapped, and being profitable is one of the best things, best feelings out there, I would say. Like, hey, you can raise a lot of money, and that makes you complacent. Actually, when you have a lot of money in the bank, you start thinking that, theek hai, I have so much money. You will take decisions where maybe you could have done something for 100 rupees. You're going to spend 5,000 on it because you have money. But when you don't have money, you will save everything. You will get in that mindset that I cannot spend this. I have to really, really save everything. And the only companies that should get funded are companies which can be scaled up exponentially. So only those companies should be funded, because what happens is you miss an opportunity. So if you're going after an opportunity which is like a great opportunity, like building electric batteries in India, for example, and if you want to do this bootstrapped, you can't do it. You cannot do it. Like, it's unimaginable. There's a lot of capex that requires, unless you are the son-in-law of Mukesh Ambani or something, or you have like a tremendous inheritance, you can't do it, right? So you need fundings. There are certain businesses which cannot be done without getting funded, that should be funded. But if you're building a normal restaurant or small scale business, you should devise it in a way where you reach profitability in 3 to 5 years, and then you grow your profits from there. So that's a good business. Could be anything. Good entrepreneur, you ask me, is a person who understands that execution is everything. You could have the best idea out there, but what really matters, and in my job as well, where like when you're in the job, when you're working as well, you could be very intelligent, but if you're not good at execution, right, it doesn't work out. So you have to, execution is everything. Like, to be a good entrepreneur, you have to be the best executor there is. You need to learn how to penetrate the market. You need to be very smart, well researched. Obviously, you have to be very intelligent, but you cannot waste time. You have to take decisions which are gonna push your brand. Take good decisions, good leadership. You need to be able to motivate your people to stick with you, because when you're building a business, you can't pay much. So the people who are going to stick with you are going to stick with you because they love you and they love the business and they see a potential in growing the business. So you need to be very good at execution and you need to be very good at managing people. I would say that's what makes a good entrepreneur.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
amazing answers to that, and I feel for the listeners that are curious about this, Siddharth has a podcast he has two podcasts, Vyapar and Bazaar, and a blog called Investing in India, where he hosts all his, writing. So, it took me weeks and weeks to prepare for this interview because I, spent so much time reading through a lot of it. And, I learned a lot about personal finance, business, wealth creation by reading Siddharth's work. So I will be including the show notes, including all the blogs and the two podcasts and his blog in the show notes. So that the last question, 1 hour just went by, and I hope to have this chat again. But for you, I know you're someone that's very curious. So if you could recommend one book that really shaped your thinking and one individual that you really look up to, you know, anyone maybe from finance or an entrepreneur. So one book and one individual that really inspires you and shaped your thinking.
So one book that really shaped my thinking, and this is really not related to finance, but I would say Conversation with God. And it's not a religious book actually, but it's a very beautiful book, and there are four parts to it. Like there are four chapters, four different books, and this book talks about everything. Talks about life, talks about relationships, talks about our planet, religion. Like if you're a curious person and if you want to learn about a lot of things and you want to learn about the art of manifestation, like how important your thoughts are, because your thoughts are energy. We can't see it. Like at a subatomic level, there is something happening when we think something. Like when I think that, okay, next 5 years, I'm going to crush it, some thought is going out. And if I'm thinking next 5 years, I'm not going to be able to do anything. So that book taught me a lot, and it reshaped my thinking. I rewired my mind in a way where, now I cannot think negatively. Like if you put me in a bunch of negative people, right, I cannot stay there. Like I will just run away from negativity. That's how I've become because of that book. So I would recommend everyone to read that book. Really changed my life. Uh, and one person that I look up to is Warren Buffett. Like he is a person that I aspire to be. Not as rich as that guy. I know. I mean, for me to be as rich as him, I have to start investing at 11. But I did not do that. I missed the bus. But just the way he thinks, the way he breaks down complex things into simple terms, right? A lot of things, like simplicity is the best answer to anything. I really believe that. So Warren Buffett is some someone I look up to, and Conversation with God is a book that I would say you could read if you want to change your life.
Thanks for that. And there's so much I learned from this conversation. I really hope we get to do this again. For the listeners tuning in, I will be linking Siddharth's blog and podcast in the show notes. Thank you again for tuning in. And Siddharth, any final thoughts before we conclude the podcast?
No, this has been a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate you inviting me on the show, and I'm thinking, man, we can do something like just like I told you, right? Marwadi bullshit thoughts. So maybe we can do something, both of us talking about different topics,
Sure.
and then we can publish that. And if people are interested, maybe tiny bits, because 1 hour podcast, as I've learned, is it's very small niche audience to it. But maybe we can do something which, a 10-minute episode on how money works, or any topic. What is quantum physics? Anything. I think you have been an amazing host, and I would love to talk to you again. Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks for that. Thank you for the listeners for tuning in. Do subscribe to the podcast. We're available on all podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, GeoSavan, Spotify, and we're also available on YouTube. We will make this live soon. And until next time, this is the T-shirt tubers signing off on the learning stories.